Hello, and thanks for joining BorderConnect's workshop on how to get started using BorderConnect's US Inbound Manager. In this short workshop presentation, we'll be joined by Egzon Muriqi and Justin Guerard, the sales account managers for BorderConnect, as we guide you through what the US Inbound Manager is, who benefits from using it, and how to file your own inbounds with BorderConnect's QP filing. We'll also explain the steps on how to register for the US Inbound Manager and QP filing, as well as giving you some tutorials on how to use the software, and also show you some common tips and tricks while we show you other thorough details of the software. I'm Justin Knowlton, Marketing Coordinator for BorderConnect, and I'll be your host as we go through the workshop. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Now, I'll send it over to Justin Guerard, where he'll take it from here and introduce BorderConnect's US Inbound Manager and QP filing.
Thanks, Justin. The US Inbound Manager is a tool to help carriers manage and stay ahead of their US inbounds and their deadlines. You're able to view all these bonds in one central location, easily see what bonds are open, closed, and which bonds actually need more attention. With minimal data input, you're able to send the electronic updates like arrival, export, and even port diversion requests on your active US inbounds. QP filing is a fairly new feature, which allows the users to actually create and submit their US inbound directly to CBP without the use of a third party like a customs broker or somebody else, some other filer. It's a great tool that I really like, and I'll show you more soon.
Thanks, Justin. So I'll shift it over to Egzon Muriqi now for the next portion on how you can register for the US Inbound Manager, and if there are any differences if you're already registered with BorderConnect versus if you're not. So take it away, Egzon. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Just give me 1 second here. I'm just going to share my screen with you guys. Just give me 1 moment here. Are you able to see my screen? Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So perfect. So basically, there's 2 ways of going about this. The first step is you have to make sure, do you have an account with BorderConnect? If you don't have an account with BorderConnect, that's the first step. So you have to head over to borderconnect.com and hit up sign up now. Creating an account with BorderConnect is fairly straightforward, fairly easy. There isn't too many fields you have to fill out. It's going to ask you for your company name, your Canadian carrier code, your SCA code. SCA code carrier code's not really mandatory for the LOI portion. I mean, if you are a carrier, then we would advise of adding your SCA code. But if you don't have a Canadian carrier code, that's totally fine. If you're just looking to use our LOI, our US Inbound Manager via the LOI cover sheet. But if you want to utilize BorderConnect for ACI, ACE manifesting, RNS, all that jazz, then you would have to add your Canadian carrier code, your SCA code. It's going to ask you for your head office address, your city, your state, all that basic information. Then it's going to ask you for your contact information, first name, last name, title, email address, phone, extension. And then the last thing, you have to create an account for you, basically your username and your password. Fairly straightforward, fairly easy. Once you create an account with BorderConnect, the next step would be to get a letter of intent completed. So getting a letter of intent completed is fairly straightforward, fairly easy. Give me 1 moment. I'll just switch over. Just give me 1 sec.
While you're switching over to that, Egzon, I just had a quick question.
Yes.
So who can register for a filer code with a letter of intent?
So basically, it's kind of, the options are they're endless. So if you're a company, if you're a trucking company, you'll be able to do that. If you're a customs broker, you can also do that. If you're a service provider basically is somebody that manages multiple companies. So you can also become a self-filer. A self-filer pretty much just means that you're going to be managing bonds. You're going to be creating bonds. So you can create bonds for trucking companies, things like that. So the options are endless usually. I mean, if you're a trucking company, then you have to have the US Inbound Manager to manage your bonds, close your bonds. If you're a service provider or if you're a customs broker, you can also be just somebody that manages multiple carriers. You don't really have to be a service provider. Rather, you can just be somebody that's managing companies, like a couple, and you just want to self-file bonds for them. You can do that. So once you're logged into BorderConnect, you'll be able to see US inbounds at the top here. Click on Inbound Dashboard. When you click on Inbound Dashboard, you'll be able to see your US Inbound Manager subscription is not enabled. if you're a U.S. bonded carrier, please generate a letter of intent. So you want to click on letter of intent. The next step is going to ask you for your company information. So it's going to say company name, address, city, postal code, state, province, SCAC code, address, things like that. You just want to make sure all that information looks good, looks fine. Then the next step is you want to download the PDF. When you download the PDF, you can just download it wherever you want. You'll be able to click download, click save. Then when you find the PDF, just give me 1 sec. I have to get the PDF here for you guys. You'll be able to sign it. So this would be what you would have to sign. So right here, you can go down, you'll be able to sign the bottom. So once you sign the bottom of the letter of intent, the next step is you would have to send the letter of intent to our admin team. The admin team's email is admin@borderconnect.com. We will work with you through the process, so you don't have to remember that right now. But as long as you're dealing with a sales team, we'll work with you on getting that letter of intent completed, getting the letter of intent sent. And this process, I mean, getting the letter of intent completed and signed and sent over to us will take 5-10 minutes. But basically the next step would be we have to send the letter of intent to CBP for approval, and that the time frame for acceptance from that is about 10 to 14 business days. It really depends on how quickly CBP will be able to provide you a filer code. Sometimes they're quicker, sometimes they might take a bit longer than normal. It just really depends on how many requests they're receiving on that particular month. But once they provide you with a filer code, you'll be able to then start creating bonds, cutting bonds, managing bonds, closing bonds, doing all that using our USN bond manager.
Thanks, Egzon. A couple of quick questions before we move forward. So they have to physically sign it, right? They have to physically print the LOI.
They can electronically sign. So a client can go in there and electronically sign the letter of intent, and that's totally fine. CBP is okay with that. Yes.
Okay,
E-signature
great.
is good. Yes.
Okay, didn't know that. Now, what is a filer code? If you don't mind, maybe sharing details on what a filer code is and why people need it.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, a filer code is it's a unique identification code, which is pretty much provided from CBP. The code is 3 characters long. It can be alphanumeric. So basically, it advises CBP that you have the capabilities of creating bonds using using the USN bond manager system. So basically, it allows you to manage bonds, create bonds. It's just like you're filing bonds, just like usually how customs brokers have their own filer codes, you would have your own filer code. And CBP would provide, they would provide you with a unique code, and that code will allow you to pretty much, you would become a filer for multiple carriers and things like that. So just like if you go to let's say you type in a customs broker, any customs broker out there, and you type in filer code, you'll be able to find the filer code that's issued that particular broker. You would have your own filer code. So yeah.
Understood.
Yep.
Similar, but not the same as like a standard carrier alpha code, for example, but just for particular
it's close,
bonds.
but it's a bit different. Yes, it's three characters long. So yeah.
Great. Very informative. Thank you very much, Egzon.
You're welcome.
All right. So I'm going to go to Justin for this one. So what are the differences between the US Inbond Manager versus using the BorderConnect for QP filing? Kind of cover what common scenarios where you'd use one and not the other, or is it even better to use just both services?
Okay, good questions. The US Inbond Manager is basically like an all-encompassing suite of your bonds. You're able to track your bonds, manage your bonds. You're able to view all your statuses, see the open, see the closed bonds. Like I said before, if you have to send these updates on the bonds, you're able to do that from the manager. And then the QP filing, it's not dealing with the existing bonds, but it's actually creating your own bonds. So the QP filing is a tool that allows you to directly send those bonds to customs and get them in their system. The difference from this is normally a customs broker or a third party would have to file these for you, but now with this tool, you're able to do it yourself. When you're able to do it yourself, saving a lot of time and effort because A, you're not relying on anyone else to do it, you're just relying on yourself. But B, if there is anything ever that went wrong with any of these bonds where, oh, you miskeyed this or you miskeyed that, you don't have to go call somebody, wait 10, 20 minutes for them to fix it and then get back to you. You can quickly just go in, correct the issue yourself, and then you're ready to go right away. When would you use one and not the other? The QP filing could be used anytime you need to create a bond yourself. However, you may have clients or contracts or loads where the client may have somebody already creating the bond for them who they like how they do it, they want to keep it that way, and they will create the bond for you. If that's the case, you don't actually need to file it. It's already created. That other company is filing it for you. However, you can actually still use the in-bond manager to query that bond, bring it up in your dashboard, and still manage and keep track of that bond. So QP filing is basically for everything you need to create yourself as a carrier, and the in-bond manager is for all your bonds entirely. Basically, if we create them, if a third party creates them, if a customs broker creates the bond, the in-bond manager is a great tool to track all of these bonds in one specific spot, and really easy to see what's on file, what's arrived, what's exported, what's stale, something that probably needs to be updated. And it really gives you a quick overview of everything you need to do.
Wow, that's great. So I know ACE has the capability where you can file your own in-bonds through that software, correct? Through BorderConnect?
Yes. Yep, that is correct.
So, okay, so what would be the advantage to using this as opposed to ACE, for example?
Another great question there. Basically, ACE, you can only create an ACE in bond if you're a truck highway manifest originating outside the US. So a lot of our carrier companies, they've probably have experience creating these ACE in bonds that you're talking about, where yeah, you don't need to actually do a QP filing for it because it's created on the ACE system. However, if you have a bond outside of like the trucking world, where maybe it came in by ocean or air, you would need to have a QP bond filed for this. And if you did not have this QP filing from BorderConnect, you'd have to go to another third party or customs broker, and they would need to file that bond that came in by a boat or a plane. It would only be able to be done in that system. In addition to that, those existing ACE bonds, once again, God forbid anything goes wrong with them, the QP, it's way easier to fix any problem in the QP system than it is in the ACE bond system. So it's something we're always recommending and pushing. If you have a filer code, if you're doing a lot of these bonds, we're really trying to get you to start creating QPs, even for your truck ACE manifest, because it's just going to save you a headache in the future.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, big difference between using filing your own bonds in ACE as opposed to QP. It seems like you have more control over the QP in bonds as opposed to the ACE. I've also noticed, like, if you're doing an ACE manifest and you have an ACE in bond, you're right. It is much harder to cancel. It's not like it was years ago where you have a little bit more control over removing an export message or removing an arrival message. I feel like they've made some changes, CBP, to the way you're able to file and make any changes or revert any changes in ACE. So that's great to know. Great information. Thank you, Justin. Yeah, so it's almost like the perfect solution from filing to closing and managing all your US in-bond shipments for using the in-bond manager plus the QP filing, where you don't even need a third party. You can do everything straight from BorderConnect's US in-bond manager suite. That's great. So Egzon, what are the steps required to file your own bonds using BorderConnect, specifically with the QP filing?
Perfect. So yeah, so basically once you complete the LOI, we send the LOI over to CBP for approval. Once they provide you with the filer code, the next step is acquiring what's called paper entry numbers, paper in-bond numbers. They have a few names, but it's the same thing. So the paper entry number pretty much allows you to create bonds. If you don't have paper entry numbers, then you won't be able to create the bonds, as the paper entry numbers are assigned to your filer. So when you request paper entry numbers, CBP will provide you with a sequence of numbers which are pretty much associated with your filer code. And the way to get those paper in-bond numbers would be one of two ways. You can either call your local CBP port. So let's assume you're based in Detroit. You could call the Detroit CBP port. It's very easy to get their numbers. You can just go down to Google, type in Detroit CBP, and you'll be able to find their number. If you run into some roadblocks along the way, you can also deal with our consultant department. So all you have to do is email consulting@borderconnect.com, or you can call 1-800-596-5176 and ask for our consultant department, and they'll be able to assist you in that. But you can definitely use our consultant department, or you can call your local CBP port, and they should be able to help you acquire those numbers.
Great. Sounds simple enough. So they have the option of calling CBP,
Yes.
getting the in-bond entry numbers.
Yeah.
So is it like what is given to the customer or like from CBP? Like, what does it look like?
So basically what's given is they send them an email with a sequence ending. So it really depends on how many numbers they request. They could be 100, it could be 500. So basically they just give them a number, like let's say 001, and it goes to like 0010 or something in that regard. And then what happens in the next step is you would add those numbers into your BorderConnect account. So you would just go into your BorderConnect account, which I can show you right now. Let me just share my screen. And basically the next step would be, once you're viewing this, you would go to manage data, and then, or not manage it, use inbounds and inbound sequences. And then you click on inbound sequences, and now you can create a inbound sequence. So you can click on create inbound sequences. You would add the starting. So basically, let's say it's this, then you would just do like this or something. And then you would just save it. Once you save your sequence, you'll be able to, as you can see, then you'll be able to use these numbers. So whenever you create a bond, the system will automatically use the next number in that particular sequence. And when you mentioned that, what does it look like? It's an email from CBP that advises of the sequence numbers and advises of there's a math to it. There's like a check digit math where the client would have to kind of do the math and get the numbers. If you add the sequences in BorderConnect, you don't have to do that. BorderConnect actually does that for you. So there's no need to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, so there you have it. BorderConnect will keep track of your in-bond sequences. And I'm assuming Egzon, when you're creating either an ACE in-bond or a QP in-bond, will it automatically pull the
Yes.
next number in sequence without and the person having to guess what the next number is?
So whenever you're creating a bond, yes, the system will pull the next numbers, the next number in the sequence. As Justin advised before, we recommend everybody, once you set up for the US Bond Manager, use the US Bond Manager to create your bonds, use the US Bond Manager to manage your bonds, just because it's the most stable. For right now, it's the most stable solution out there. Whereas you can create bonds using the ACE shipment, but why do that when you have the USM bond? It's like a suite, all in one suite. You can create your bonds, you can manage your bonds. If you cancel bonds using the USM bond manager, it won't cause any issues because you can resubmit it. So there's a lot more when it comes to like perks on using the USM bond manager to manage all of your bonds. And yes, it will. Sorry, I just kind of ran in tangent, but it will use the next number in the sequence. Yes, yeah.
That's great. That's one less field to enter when you're filing your bonds.
Yes, exactly. And that is a bit of the sequence. The numbers are. You want to make sure you have the right numbers just because these are actually provided by CBP. So let's say this number, like let's say I have a sequence that's for me and then you have your own sequence. If I use your sequence of numbers, then there can be issues, right? So you have to make sure that you have the sequence, the proper numbers, and you don't reuse numbers, things like that. So
yeah. It's like using someone else's shipment control number when you cross the border. There's going to be issues, right?
Yes, exactly. So you have to be wary of that. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. All right. Let's dive into the software then, shall we? Justin, if you don't mind, maybe show our customers or potential customers a tour of the US Inbound Manager.
That sounds great. Let me just jump in here, share my screen. If you logged into the first time, BorderConnect, this is what you're going to be greeted by. Nice little home page. One thing you'll quickly notice is these navigation tabs at the top. Regardless of whatever service you're using us for, you're going to see these tabs. Whatever page you're on, they're always here for you to quickly navigate ACE, ACI. But for this module, all we're going to be talking about is the US Inbound Manager. So that's where we're going to stay. This US Inbound tab, if you hover over it, you'll see a whole bunch of different options here. If you just click the tab itself or this inbound dashboard, it's going to take you to basically we'll call the dashboard. It's going to give you a quick overview of all your bonds. Every bond that you've queried or sent, you're going to quickly be able to see it here. And you're going to be able to see what type of bond it is, destination, the bill of lading number, the entry number, and most importantly to me, the status. These statuses are going to tell you basically at a quick glance where is the bond in its movement. Is it en route? Is it arrived? Is it exported? And that's really what we're looking for. We want to make sure all of our bonds are closed down. So we can see these green ones here, exported, these blue ones en route. Pretty much just the life cycle of the bonds. Even easier, we have these nice little infographics at the top where you can quickly filter. If you only cared about seeing which bonds are closed, I could click this close bonds and it's going to filter and just show me the closed bonds. If I wanted to know the stale in bonds, which I mentioned before, where these are bonds that may need a little more attention, maybe these should have been exported, but they're not quite yet. We could click on this, filter it, and kind of investigate, okay, why have these exports or arrival messages not been sent yet?
Okay, Justin, sounds simple enough. Now, how do you bring the bonds into, I guess I'll ask Egzon this, if Egzon, you don't mind showing me.
Yes.
How do you send status queries? Like, how do you bring the bonds into the dashboard, for example?
Okay.
And I guess if we want to cover how to arrive and export bonds as well.
Perfect. I'm going to just share my
Thanks.
screen here and I'll show you. Give me 1 second here. Just give me 1 sec. Perfect. So the first step is once you're logged into BorderConnect, you'll hover over US inbounds. When you click on inbound dashboard, you'll be able to send what's called send an inbound status query. So when you send an inbound status query, you're asking CBP US Customs for the most up-to-date information on that particular bond. Is it on file? Is it not on file? Is it, is it arrived? Is it exported? So the first step is you want to click on send inbound status query right over here. And then it's going to ask you for the inbound entry number. And then you'll be able to input your inbound entry number right here. Obviously, I'm not going to send an inbound status query, but this is how you would send it. So the inbound entry number, you'll type it in, then you'll click on send inbound status query to CBP. When you click on send inbound status query to CBP, you'll be able to see all of your bonds that you've queried right in your dashboard. So if you scroll down, you'll be able to see it. Well, let's assume I sent the status query for that bond and it came back as this particular bond. So when I'm looking at the status query, I'll be able to see the entry number. I'll be able to see the originating port, the destination port, the type of bond. So this is a TNE. So we know that it's coming from Texas and it's going to Port Arthur, Texas. Then maybe it's going into Mexico or something in that regard. So basically the status query will pull up all that information for your bonds. And then you'll be able to kind of take a look at the history of the bond, whatever happened with the bond, you'll be able to see right here. And then let's assume this bond, it's arrived in Port Arthur, Texas, and it actually left for Mexico. So the next step would be update inbound. So you would click on update inbound. You'll click on arrive entire inbound. Now you want to include the firm's code or the US inbound destination. So it's at Port Arthur. So let's assume that the client dropped it off at a warehouse somewhere in that area. So as you can see, the system will automatically kind of find the firms that are the nearest that are in that location. So let's assume it's U06. Like let's assume it's this one. So yeah, let's assume it's this one right here in Port Arthur, Texas. You want to include the inbound arrival date, when did it arrive, and the inbound arrival time. House bill, if there is a house bill, then you can add the house bill. If there's no house bill, you don't have to add the house bill. This is an optional field, but I mean, if you have a house bill, I recommend adding it. And then the next step would be send inbound arrival message to CBP. If you click on that, you'll be able to click on, there's two options, send inbound arrival message to CBP, or you can click on send inbound arrival message and automatically send an export message. This is only used if you were going to a secure zone. Let's say you're taking the bond to a airport or ocean port where it's secure, and you know that it's in the hands of it's going to go on the ship and leave the country. That's when you can automatically export a bond, just because you really don't have. I mean, you don't know when it's going to be exported. It might be exported tomorrow, it might be exported the next week. So if it's at a secure FTZ, and you know that nobody can get in there and grab the freight or whatever, then you can automatically export it. And you can also do this if you were crossing into Mexico or into Canada right away. So if the driver got to the border and they were there for like a minute or two and they crossed into Mexico or Canada, then you can automatically export. But let's assume that they're not doing that. Let's assume they're going to this firm's code warehouse. You would just send an inbound arrival. Once you send an arrival, you'll be able to see the status will go into arrival status. And the way that would look like, it would look like this. So it would just say arrived. So the bond is in arrived status. Let's then let's assume the bond was, exported into Mexico, then what you would do, you go here, you would click on export entire inbound. Exporting it is very easy. You just need the date, the time, and then you'll be able to send an export message to CBP. Then when it's exported, you'll be able to see that right here, it's exported. So you'll be able to see that this bond is exported, this one's good, it's all closed. And if I go in my inbound dashboard, I'll be able to see, if I click on this particular bond, I'll be able to see that it's closed. You don't have to do anything. It's a T&E bond. You don't have to, that's all you have to do. And you can print out your inbound closure report right at the top here. There's different inbound types. So there's like an IE, a T&E, and IT. T&E is the most common one, but if you have an IE, that will mean that it's automatically getting exported. So let's assume the freight is it's at an airport, and you want to move it from one warehouse to a different warehouse in the airport, and it's going to go on a plane and leave. That would be an IE. So when you do an IE, the bond would automatically go to arrive status. Then all you would have to do is export it. If it was an IT, that would mean that it's coming from one place to another location. Like let's say it's Detroit to Laredo. Then you would set the bond as an IT, and all you would have to do is arrive the bond for an IT. The only time you would have to export it is if it's an IE or if it's a T&E. That's when you would have to export your bonds.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
I was just about to ask you that, the differences between the two, because obviously different statuses mean that it could be closed, right?
Yes,
Depending on the bond type.
Yes, exactly. And sometimes you might query a bond where it comes back and it says it's already closed, right? So maybe a customs broker closed it for you, or maybe a different filer closed it for you. So always sending, and I always recommend if you send a status query and you get this, you can always send another status query. You just hit send status query, and you'll get the most up-to-date information on your bonds.
So if in scenarios where there could be other hands in the pot, so to speak, when it comes to transmitting bond updates to customs, if you're not the only one, for example, which is probably not a good practice in the first place, then you could get the most up-to-date status that was recently transmitted.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
so
great.
you can always send status queries on your bond, and you'll be able to see, what's the current status of that. If you send a status query and it's not arrived or anything, then you can just perform the arrival yourself using the US Bond Manager. But yeah, you can definitely send status queries whenever you want. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't hurt anything. Yeah.
No.
Another thing I mentioned, we've been getting a couple of questions from customers where you see the status concluded. Specifically when it's going to Mexico, let's say from the United States. Is there a reasoning why that's different than, let's say, exported? If you want to maybe touch on that.
I can answer that one for you. So if you're seeing a status where it says concluded, basically what that means is a subsequent in bond has been created. And what that is maybe you took the bond and you moved it from Detroit down to Laredo. But you dropped it off at the warehouse and you didn't actually move it into Mexico. On a normal IT bond, that bond is closed when it arrives down to Laredo. A lot of these, just because, the end bond is moving into Mexico, they get created as T&Es, but they're kind of not really T&Es because the original, like you as the carrier moving it to Laredo, you're not responsible for the movement. You're not actually driving it into Mexico. Usually a second carrier will do the load from the warehouse in Laredo, across it into the border, and take it to wherever it's going in Mexico. What this does is, a second broker will create a subsequent in bond, which is just that immediate export from Laredo into Mexico, and they conclude your bond. Yeah, your bond was never exported, but it was concluded. They've now taken it over, and your requirement for that in bond is complete. So it's now on a different bond. Your part's done. It's now on the other carrier and the other broker to handle that from here on out.
I see. Okay, so there's another there's another portion of the bond that kind of finishes it off. Like the broker will kind of, I guess, finish off the bond. Now, I guess the question I have is, how do we know? Like, what are some telltale signs that, hey, maybe it's concluded, maybe I should send this, for example?
So that's basically a lot of our carriers that do have these T&Es that go down to Mexico that they don't actually bring in themselves. I always recommend send the arrival when you get down to Laredo, El Paso, wherever you're going, or wherever. And then before around a day or so, whenever you think it has been updated, There is a spot in BorderConnect to check for subsequent inbound. Right next to the status query, you're able to find this check for subsequent inbound. And basically, it's doing a very similar search, but instead of querying against the entry number, it's looking at the bill of lading number, the PAPS number used. And when it does that, it finds a secondary bond created from that movement to Laredo, down into Mexico, etc. And that's going to send the update to your bond and your dashboard. Then that then will say concluded, knowing that you're all set.
Okay, understood. So yeah, I guess the inbound manager covers pretty much every scenario, and looks incredibly easy to use, from tracking to closing your inbounds. Okay, so let's pivot over to the QP portion, and I guess Justin, if you want to continue, maybe show people how to create a QP inbound and how easy it is in BorderConnect.
Yeah, of course. This is what I've been waiting for because this is my favorite part about it. Like I said before, I am much happier that we can send these QPs instead of the aces because it just makes it a lot easier for everyone anytime there's any kind of issue. But creating the inbound is not going to be that much different. If you're familiar with creating them in ace, it's going to be almost the exact same thing. So we'll start from the beginning. If you're logged into BorderConnect, you're going to be on this page. Head over to your US inbound tab here, and you'll see this section where you can start a new QP inbound. We're just obviously going to click that, and it's going to take us to our first page. As Egzon mentioned before, the one requirement you really need to create your own inbound is these inbound entry numbers that you get from CBP. Because in my demo account here, we have our sequence already assigned in the inbound sequences tab that Egzon went over. It's just automatically going to assign it from the sequence. If for whatever reason you don't want to put your sequence in BorderConnect, this would be a normal field just like the rest, where you could type in your 9-digit entry number and put it in this way. But we really recommend the automatic assigning feature because it just really ensures that you're never going to duplicate a number, you're never going to make a typo. It's just always going to pick the next one and put it in there for you. The next field, inbound entry type, Egzon touched on this a little bit. There's 3 different types: immediate transportation, transport exportation, and i.e. immediate export. Like you said, almost like the majority of them, transports and exportation. Basically what these are, immediate transportation is a bond just moving through the US to US. Transport and exportation is in the US and it's moving somewhere to be moved out of the country. And then immediate export is a goods that are basically in the US on a port, Laredo, Miami, wherever it came in for, but CBP is sending it back. It has to leave the country, so we're going to do an immediate export. For this example here, we're going to do the simplest one, just a highway bond truck going from Canada down through the US and into Mexico. So we're going to take a transportation and exportation bond. US port of entry, we're just going to pick wherever you enter the US from. For example, we're going to put Detroit here. And then US inbound destination. This is going to be the final place in the US before it leaves the country. For this, we're going to go with Laredo, probably the most common movement I see. Foreign inbound destination. This is only required for the bonds that export the country, the 62 and 63. And basically, it's just exactly what it sounds like. Where is it going that isn't in the US? So I'm just going to type Mexico here. It's going to give me a list of all these different ports. If you know specifically where you're going in Mexico, obviously you're going to put whatever province or state you're looking at. Me, I'm just going to go with the Mexican state one because that's what I like. And then firms code. If you had a bond that was originating from a warehouse or something, you could put in the firms code. But for this type of movement, we're going to leave it blank because it originated in Canada. Estimated date of US entry, exactly what it sounds like. When did it actually cross into the States? Very easy to use calendar here. Just pick whatever date and time that it fits. And then import and carrier. You'll notice when you create these bonds that there's all these little information tabs. I always recommend if you ever second guess or doubt what the actual field is, click these to kind of expand it and you'll get a little bit more info. But basically the importer and carrier is whoever actually brought the shipment into the US. So for our truck example here, it's going to be the highway carrier company. But if you're doing a bond for like ocean or air, this is actually going to be the ocean carrier or the air carrier. So for this one, truck, this is the first one. I'm just going to pick this one. And then in bond carrier ID, this is going to be you, whoever's opening the bond. It's going to be your IRS number that's associated with your bond. If this is not added, you can just click here and add it. And you can put in, basically, it shows you the different formats that are available. Some, depending on however your bond is set up, you may use the IRS number or the US assigned number or even the social security number. Whatever one fits for your situation, you just enter it here, put your name and carrier code, and save. We're just going to take the first one on the list here. And then in bond carrier code SCAC. Once again, the carrier code is actually just moving the goods. This is going to be the trucking company. So we're going to go with, let's take a look here, double check CNRU. We're just going to match that. And then the import and conveyance name. If basically we click this little blurb, we see for truck in bonds, use the truck number. So let's just say our truck number was 01. If this was highway or ocean or air, we would use the plane name or the boat name, whatever field fits in there. Total value, pretty simple, just the total value of your actual shipment. We're just going to make it even, a nice $100,000. FTZ or warehouse withdrawal, if this is the case, we can select yes. And then also for if it's subject to FDA, we can just put yes or no here. For our simple example, we're going to leave them both as no. And then for previous in-bond number, how I mentioned before, it is possible to create a subsequent in-bond for like an IE going out in Mexico. If you were doing something in that case, you could reference the previous in-bond number by entering that number here. But we are not going to do that. We'll just leave it blank and we're going to move on to the QP. So we save our kind of in-bond data and then we get to our bill of lading where this deals more with the specifics of the shipment. If this is a highway one, like we're saying it is, our master bill of lading number, this number is going to be the PAPS number or shipment control number that you're going to be using on your eManifest. So we'll just put a nice little number here. If this was an ocean or air bill, we would click this little link and just kind of copy whatever the master ocean or air bill was. But for our truck one, we'll leave it for now, and we have to put in the rest of the details. Foreign port of lading, basically where it was loaded. In our case, I'm just going to put Ontario. Obviously, if you don't know, if you just typed in the name, you can filter it all out. Place of pre-receipt, optional, valid country name in which the carrier first took possession. We could put Canada here, but it's optional. I'm just going to leave it blank. Gross weight, let's just say 45,000 pounds. Foreign shipper, this is going to be the address wherever it came from, basically. If it came overseas, whatever overseas address, you see we have a couple Chinas in here. But for this truck one, we're going to go with the Windsor address, ABC shipper, on a Windsor, Ontario. And then for the consignee, exactly that, just wherever you're delivering to. If it's an IT, wherever you're delivering it in the States, or if it's a TNE, you can put the Mexican or out of country address here as well. So
I assume it's pretty easy to add a new consignee or a shipper, for example.
That is a good thing I should touch on. It's very easy to do for both shipper and consignee. If they're not in here, or say if I filtered, maybe I can't remember if this name is in here. No, we filter, no results found. Then click that add shipper and a little pop-up appears that'll put all the important details we need to add for both the shipper and the consignee. Name, street address, city, state, postal code. And then if it is anything out of country, you'll see a little show all at the top. You can click this and you can actually change the country. If it's something from Germany, Europe, or wherever, you can change it and input the correct information for that foreign shipper and consignee. But we'll get back to Windsor on this one. And then, we'll just put Laredo here. I know there's going to be one. So we're going to this Laredo warehouse. Once we have those details in, we can save and create the commodity. And this is obviously just going to be the actual description of the goods. So description, what do we want to haul? Let's haul some auto parts, steering wheels. That sounds good. Basically just type in whatever you need, and then quantity, piece count, weight are the next things to follow. We have, let's say 45, and then the units of measure, a whole bunch, every kind of unit of measure CBP allows us to put is here as an option. We're just going to go with units right now. I don't know exactly what kind of units they are, so we're just going to put that. Net weight, we're going to make it easy again and say 45,000 pounds. And the value, we're going to match what we had before at 100,000. This is a new field that if you're familiar with eManifest, then this is probably the one that's different that you're not used to. The HTS code is a harmonized tariff code basically assigned to every product that can be imported or exported. It's a 6 or 8 digit number that basically you're going to need to know that classifies the goods. Normally it's going to be on an invoice where you can actually find this, but if it's not on an invoice, you may have to reach out to the client, like the importer, whoever they would be able to provide this to you, because you will need to put this in the bond. So for just auto parts, we're just going to go with the standard general one, 8708.99. But yeah, you would need to know exactly what you're hauling here. The next field, marks and numbers. Once again, if you're familiar with the manifesting, a lot of times you leave this blank because it's just kind of optional. On an inbound, it is mandatory. So we do need to fill in information in this marks and numbers fields. And if we click this little eye, it'll show the symbols and markings outside of the package. Basically, what we put here on an inbound is just anything to identify the load. A lot of times we'll use like the invoice number, the bill of lading number, load number. Some people will even put the seal number for if they're hauling a sealed trailer. But anything to identify what actually you're hauling, because if customs wants to audit this or look back in the future, you want to be able to show this load was a part of this specific shipment. So anything that identifies it, we'll just put that, is what you want to put in the marks and numbers. So we're going to save and move on to basically it's just save and view at this point. We're in the bill of lading, just kind of looking at all the details. And at this point, you can go back to the QPN bond. And this is pretty much it. We've created the bond, and the last step is sending it to customs. So if I was ready to send this, I would hover over this send to CBP tab, send QPN bond, and then it's going to be transmitted to customs. And you're going to basically in a couple minutes, the status will change from unknown or not on file to on file, or it'll be on file. And then when the eManifest crosses the border, it'll actually change to on route automatically. Let's say the bond was on file already and we realized, oh, the piece count was wrong. Basically, all you would need to do to correct that in any state would just be jump back into this bond, send a cancel on the bond, go into your bill of lading, correct whatever you need to correct. If my computer wants to load. There we go. So let's say it was 46 pieces. We just quickly come in here, save it, and then we would just send it back again after we canceled, made the update that we needed to make, and then we just resend it. Another thing that a lot of carriers like to see is the paper copy of the inbound. So you notice at the top here, the CBP form 7512, you have the option to print, email, or fax. If I click print, it's going to generate a PDF where anyone that's done bonds before, this is going to look really familiar. You're just going to have this paper. It's going to have your entry number in the top right, all your information on the shipment below. And basically you would want to print this off, give this to their driver, and they would bring this to the agent at customs or even at the warehouse where they're delivering, because a lot of times they want to see that information. So that is something else they would require. One more thing about the bonds though, if like I said, you did that and then you had to find it and edit it, if I logged out today and logged back in tomorrow, I could always search for this in bond just by going to the in bond dashboard or in bond tab here, search QPN bonds, and it's going to show me all the bonds I've created in the past. These ones in the demo account obviously are just unknown status, but I'd click into this bond just like you would a manifest, and basically you can edit, view, kind of manipulate this bond however you need to if you ever needed to get back into it.
That's great. What I like about this is it's almost the layout is almost the exact same as BorderConnect's ACE and ACI creation and searching. Like that's the one thing I've always loved about BorderConnect is everything's familiar. So if there's a new product or new service or new feature that we have, you know, our devs are hard at work trying to make it almost the exact same as what our customers are already familiar with.
Absolutely, yeah. It's if you're familiar with ACE, familiar with ACI, if you move to inbounds now, it's gonna be familiar. And every one of them, even if you're a brand new client, new to trucking, my favorite words to describe BorderConnect is intuitive. Your first thought on how do I do this? What is that? Whatever your first thought is almost always correct. It's very easy to use.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's I guess Egzon, if you want to cover some of the statuses of the
Yes.
QPN bonds briefly, and then, you know, maybe where customers or potential customers can, let's say they're more of a do-it-yourself kind of person, where they can go to, you know, kind of get some helpful guides and tutorials.
Sure. Yep. Give me one moment here, guys. Okay. Okay. So the first step is once you're logged into BorderConnect, and if you, let's say you want to view your bonds, you want to make sure that everything is good, the bonds that you have created, the first step is hover over USN bonds and click in search QPN bonds. When you click on search QPN bonds, all of the bonds that you have created using the USN bond manager, you'll be able to see here. So if I scroll down, you'll be able to see all these bonds are created by one of our clients. So as you can see, some are exported, some are en route, some are exported, some are arrived, things like that. So basically, if you want to, you'll have an overview of all of your bonds right over here. And if you wanted to, you can, you know, obviously update the search the search date. So if you go here, you can just change the date. Let's say you want to view more bonds. You just go here to here, and you would just click on search, and then you'll be able to see all the bonds here. It looks like this client is fairly good at closing their bonds, and they're on top of the bonds. So basically, we always recommend whenever you create a bond, whenever it's arrived, exported, or whatever it may be, that you're always on top of your bonds because you have 2 business days to, you know, report the arrivals and the exports and things like that on your bonds. So yeah, so basically you'll be able to view your bonds right here. So search QP and pretty much right here. And in bond statuses, so there are different statuses. Some are en route, some are arrived, but basically these are pretty much all the statuses you're going to be seeing right over here. So not on file, you'll see on file, en route, in transit foreign, in transit US, unarrived, arrived. So basically these are just the current status, but the main ones that you're going to be seeing are either not on file, en route, arrived, exported, and concluded. And you also see rejected. Rejected just means that the bond that you're trying to send, there's something wrong with it. Maybe you're trying to link with an ocean bill. The ocean bill information doesn't match, or an air bill, it doesn't match, then it comes back as rejected. So whenever you see these particular warnings, I mean, if you get a rejection, we always recommend calling our support team. They're here 24/7. They can help you anytime. But just to quickly go over the statuses here, if you see unknown, it's one purple bar. Basically, it just means that this bond is currently active, but it hasn't been transmitted to CBP yet. So it's basically recommended to finish entering the data on your bond and then submitting it over to CBP. So it basically just it's an unknown status. It's just you started the bond, you haven't sent it yet, you're still working on it. Not on file is basically a bond received response from in bond status query. So if you send a status query and you get the not on file, it just indicates that the bond was not filed by a customs broker or a third party or like a service provider or like a self-filer, or it was canceled. It might have been canceled. Say you create a bond, you cancel it, and if you query that bond, you'll be getting that not on file status because it doesn't exist anymore. On file, it just means that the in bond was accepted and is on file with CBP. So the status has been, this is successful transmission. So basically when you create a bond, you send it, you'll be able to see the on file status. If you want to move a bond, I always advise clients, if you want to, you know, pick up the bond and start transporting it wherever it needs to go, like let's say Laredo to Detroit or wherever, you always want to see the en route status. Just because if it says on file, that just means that the bond is on file, but it's not ready for pickup. So what that means is that if you go to Laredo and you want to pick up a bond and move it to Detroit, if you pick up the bond and it's still into on file status, CBP still thinks that bond is still in Laredo. So you have to make sure that your bond shows as en route. That's why we always recommend sending a status query. So if you create a bond and then you send a status query, it goes to en route. That advises CBP knows that this bond is ready for pickup. It's ready for movement wherever it may need to go, and you're safe to pick it up. Just because there has been cases where clients, they create a bond or they query a bond, it comes up back as on file. They go pick up the bond. The freight, sorry, and then they transport it wherever it may need to go, and then they try to close it and it won't work because you can't close a bond that's on file. The bond needs to be en route before you actually close it. If you try to do it, you're just going to receive a rejection back. So that's that's something that I always advise our clients that don't pick up something unless it's en route. If it's on file, go back to your client, go speak to your client, go speak to the broker, make sure that the necessary steps are set so you can actually pick up that bond. Arrived, it's en route to say, I just covered en route. So basically just advise that the bond is pretty much ready for movement within the United States. Arrived, it's the dark green bars. You've arrived your bond. If this was an IT bond, you would just arrive it and you're done. Anything else, T&E, IE, then you would have to export them. But that's pretty much the gist of arrival. The bond is in arrival state. If it's a 61 immediate transport. Export it, just as I explained, or in Guerard explained, it just means that this bond is exported, it's closed in most cases. If it's a T&E, then once it's exported, it's closed. Once, let's say it was an IE, once it's exported, it's closed as well. So I just advise that the bond is exported, it's no longer in the US, it's somewhere else, it's either wherever it may need to go. And concluded as Guerard advised. So basically it can be when the USN bond type 62 transportation exportation bond destined to Mexico, it changed to a different bond, with the original in bond entry number. So let's say there's some movements with different carriers that went from Laredo into Mexico, and you have a Mexican carrier that picks it up in Laredo, takes it into Mexico. They have to rebond it so they can transport it. So once they cross into Mexico with the freight, it would go to concluded status. So you would just check for subsequent bond. So basically the Mexican carrier can't just go in Laredo and pick up the freight. They have to actually create a bond, like an IE. That's how they should do it, an IE to pick up the freight and export it into Mexico. Just like if you think of it, a freight coming into Canada, you can't just go to the port and pick it up and take it into Canada. You have to make sure that you actually create a bond for that movement. And reject it. If you get this rejection, it just advises that there's something wrong with the bond. So whenever you get a rejection, you can give us a call. Sometimes you will see the status, like the current issue in the history of the bond. But if you don't understand, like let's say it's WP10 reject or something like that, you can call our team and you can call us. You can chat with us. Our support team is here ready to help you.
Great. Just a quick question, Egzon. So let's say let's go back to the on file status, for example. Maybe there's some miscommunication with the highway carrier and the broker, or something along those lines. So what happens if they try and send an arrival while it's on file? Because I noticed some of our customers don't really know the proper steps, to get to be able to send an arrival. So what happens if our system determines that, oh, you can't send an arrival? Like what happens if they send an arrival in a scenario where it's only on file in custom system?
So customers will send them a reject. So basically, once, let's say the client goes in there and they're like, oh yeah, I have a bond, it's on file, I actually crossed into Canada, so I have to arrive it and export it. Once they try to go and arrive the bond, they're going to get a rejection back. So basically, it will allow them to submit it, but then the system will know that, oh, actually this bond is on file. It actually never, CBP thinks that this bond actually never moved. It never left where the originating location. So you can create a bond from Laredo and it's on file, but if it's not en route, it just means that it hasn't actually started moving from Laredo to wherever it needs to go. So CBP still thinks that bond is that bonded freight is still in Laredo. So if they try to do it, they'll get a rejection back until the bond is en route. That allows them to actually perform the arrival, the closures, because CBP knows it's moving, it's on its way to its destination.
So the officer basically has to authorize it for movement upon entry into the United
Yes,
States.
there
which
has
will
to be an
push it.
authorization. Yep, yeah. So basically, CBP would have to authorize, make sure that the bond is authorized to move, and that's when the client can, move the freight. And we always recommend if the freight is on file and you want to go and pick it up, wait until it's en route before you actually start moving it. So yeah.
Great tips.
Yep.
All right. So Justin, if you want to cover information on BorderConnect's pricing structure for the U.S. inbound manager and the QP inbound filing, and maybe there's some cheap options for customers out there who don't really file too often. But if you want to go ahead and cover that.
Yeah, of course. So a little preface, all of our pricing is always available on our website. I'll share it here, just on our BorderConnect page. If you went to Google BorderConnect, you'd be here on our kind of page. You see pricing, you can see all of our services, eManifest, inbound, QP. So for this one, I'll jump into the inbound manager, obviously. And basically, this is the pricing right here. If you're just managing your bonds, you're not looking to file, you're comfortable with what you have set up with the broker, and that's fine. But you want to manage and make sure that you're sending your arrivals and everything. Just the inbound manager pricing is this. Basically, if you only do up to 100 bonds, it's only going to be $39.95 a month. So this is probably where most of our carriers are in, even if you do the odd bond shipment here or there. Only $40. Pretty reasonable, definitely. If you're a little bit more active in the bonded shipments, you're doing up to 500. You'll be in this super plan where it's up to 500 in bonds, $89.95. Definitely still a good deal. And then after that, it's just the unlimited plan where it's 500 or more, just $169.95 a month. Basically, we bill monthly based on how many bonds you're actually managing. So how many status queries, send arrivals, exports on. And that's where this total is coming from. So if I status query 20 bonds this month, I would just be in the starter plan where it's up to 100 bonds. Let's say you're a carrier though, where your volume fluctuates a little bit, where some months you do a lot of bonded shipments, some months you don't. We have this dynamic pricing system where our system will track your usage and bill you the appropriate plan that you fall into for any given month. So let's say month one, you did 50 bonds, you'd be in this starter plan where you're only up to 100. It costs you basically $40. Say month two, a little bit busier of a month, and you do 200 bonds. Automatically, without calling us, you'd be moved up into this super plan where you'd be charged the 89 for up to 500 bonds. But it works the same way if you're going down. Let's say you have a month where, okay, now it's back down to I only do 20 this month. Without calling us, we see that your volume is decreased and we're just charging you the $39.95 again. So it's really nice that we track your usage. You don't ever have to give us a call like, hey, I got this new contract. Oh, we're no longer doing that one. It's not really a back and forth of, hey, let's keep updating our pricing plan because our volume's changed. We just have these plans, and wherever you fall into for any given month, these are the prices you're going to be paying. In addition to that, if you are a carrier or a client who is looking to file your own bonds, a little bit different pricing, still definitely reasonable though. The starter plan for this is just up to 10 bonds, like Justin said before. If you only do a bond every month, one here, one there, it's just $39.95. And you do not, if you're a QP filing, you do not have to pay this plus the inbound manager fee. It's just this fee for both the QP and the inbound manager. So if you're under 10 bonds, it's going to be $39.95 a month. If you're between 10 and 100, it's going to be $89.95. Between 100 and 500, just under $200. And the unlimited, if you're cutting over 500 bonds a month, just under $400. And once again, these are the dynamic pricing where if your volume fluctuates a little bit each month, we're going to bill you wherever you fall into, and give you the best deal that we can.
Great. So the starter plan for the QP filing is basically you can file up to almost, 9 bonds per month for free if you use the US inbound manager. Is that correct?
Yep, 9 bonds a month for free, and it's pretty much the exact same pricing as the US inbound, like the inbound manager. So if you're cutting any bonds, you're basically getting 10 for free at this point, because most likely you're going to be managing your bonds either way, right? So it's definitely a good deal, especially if you're a new carrier just getting started, just getting your foot in the door. It's a really easy to use solution that doesn't really have too many drawbacks, I don't think.
Yeah, that's great. Pretty straightforward pricing. I like that. So are there, Egzon, are there any helpful guides or tools? Like, let's say, as I mentioned, a kind of like a do-it-yourself type person. If somebody wants help, let's say they're a new customer and they want to walk through, or
Yeah.
they want to learn themselves, what kind of tools do they have at their disposal?
So we have an abundance of tools available. Basically what we have is we have a great wiki page that goes over, abundance of articles, things like that, on how to create your ACE, how to create your ACI, how to create bonds, how to manage bonds. Pretty much goes over everything. I'll share my screen here for you guys so you guys can take a quick look here. So basically this is the BorderConnect wiki page. As you can see right here, there's an abundance of articles and guides and did you know. So basically it goes over customs regulations, how to use the system. It helps out clients on what they need to do to become bonded, non-bonded. Kind of it's the ultimate tool in my opinion. I know that when I started working here at BorderConnect, this was a great resource for myself on how to learn learning more about customs, things like that. We also have a YouTube page that has an abundance of videos as well, tutorials. So there's an ACI eManifest tutorial videos, ACE eManifest tutorials, mobile device tutorials. So there's DIY customs consulting. So DIY customs consulting pretty much goes over what you would need to become, like US bonded or Canadian bonded, or what do you need to actually start driving and hauling freight into Canada, the US. It walks you through pretty much walks you through this from A to Z, if you want to call it, on what you would need to start hauling freight. So we have an abundance of resources at your disposal. And if you go to our YouTube channel, you can find whatever you're looking for, videos, shorts. We have all that. And if you go to the BorderConnect wiki, you can just search up bonds or something. Like, let's say you wanted to learn about bonds. So if you type into bonded, so bonded highway customs glossary, bonded warehouse customs glossary, if I click on that, I can learn more about bonded warehouses. We have carriers that are hauling freight into bonded warehouses in Canada, things like that. So you can learn more about what the bonded warehouse does, things like that. And we also have a 24-hour support team, which you can call anytime. You can call it 1-800-596-5176, extension 1. That's directly to support. And they're more than happy to help you. And we also have a chat feature. So once you're in BorderConnect, you'll be able to chat with our team 24/7. But I always recommend, whenever we have new clients that sign up, go to the support wiki, go to the YouTube channel, and we're also more than happy to help you guys. The sales team is always available, like not always, but primarily available from 9 to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday, and we're more than happy to help you, show you how to use the system, things like that. So yeah.
Great. Many tools at your disposal.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so complex, right? Customs is so complex. It's always changing. Maybe there's a new feature that BorderConnect launched. We want to make sure that our customers have all the tools and knowledge at their disposal as quickly as possible. But yeah, that's really important, especially in this ever-changing industry. And that we're open 24/7. That's a huge bonus.
Yes.
We get feedback from our customers, I know, a lot about how great it is to actually talk to somebody. We don't have somebody waiting on hold for 20 minutes. We don't outsource our calls to people that may not have the customs expert experience that we have here at BorderConnect, which is great. All right. Well, thanks, Egzon. I appreciate your time. Justin, thanks so much. You guys have been very helpful. And we hope that customers and potential customers watching this take a look at how valuable these tools are that BorderConnect does offer. So I'd like to thank everybody for watching. If you just tuned in to our YouTube channel, subscribe below. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always contact, as Egzon mentioned, our sales account managing team at sales@borderconnect.com, where you'll get to speak to either Justin or you'll speak to Egzon, or you can reach out to our 24/7 support team who are very knowledgeable on the US Inbound Manager, and you can reach them at support@borderconnect.com, or you can reach us again through the chat feature or by calling 1-800-596-5176, and extension 1 will bring you to support. Extension 4 will bring you to the sales team, who will be open 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, Eastern. Again, thanks for watching, and we hope you found this informative and knowledgeable. Hi, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you'd like to watch more videos like this, check out these videos here, or subscribe below. If you're not already signed up to BorderConnect, you can sign up today for a free 45-day trial using special promo code EASY45. Thanks for watching.